For today's khutbah, we begin with the surah that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. A very, very beautiful hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is a surah in the Quran, there are 30 verses in the Quran. It would bring great joy to my heart if they were in the heart of every believer. And then he recited the beginning of Surah Al-Mulk. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. In Surah Al-Mulk, Allah SWT, in the second verse we'll focus on, where Allah SWT said that we have created death and life to test who is the best in deeds. Right? لِيَبْلُوَكَ. This is a test for us to see who is best in deeds, that death and life. And the understanding is that if we had life without death, there would be no test. For this khutbah though, we'll go a little further than this life. We'll begin with one of our great scholars, Imam Al-Hadad, in his book, Lives of Man. Imam Al-Hadad, in the book, Lives of Man, he says that men and women live 5 lives. 5. The first life is called the life of the floating soul. This is the life where we were with Allah SWT. It's mentioned in the Quran where Allah SWT gathered all the souls and He asked the question, Alastu bi Rabbikum? Am I not your Lord? Right? And we have no idea how long this first life lasted. Literally could have been millions of years that we were in the life of the soul. And when the souls were gathered and Allah SWT asked this collection of souls, there was not a single soul that did not respond with, verily, yes, Bala, you are our Lord. And as our scholars have said, this moment printed Tawheed upon us. Deepest inside, even in this life, deep in our soul, there is not a human being on earth, whether they spend their days and nights obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they spend their days and nights rejecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether they spend their days in the light of Allah or in the darkness of the devil, there's not a single creation on earth amongst the humans that did not respond to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are our Lord. And this was in the first life. And we'll speak about that in a moment. We also know that in this first life, there were certain people, and this is an interpretation that many of our scholars share of one of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the souls, they're like an army in ranks. The interpretation of this hadith was that there were souls in the first life that knew each other. And Ghazali speaks about this. And he says, you may meet someone from that life in the second life. And he says, if you meet someone and you feel this deep inner connection with them, it could be that you were close to them in the first life. And there may be someone you meet and you feel a disinclination. And it could be that you were distant from that person in the first life. In our deen, this idea of soulmate is not just a romantic idea used to sell cards on Valentine's Day. The true soulmate is the one that your soul was with in the first life, and is the one your soul will be with in the 5th life, in Jannah, inshallah. And the soulmate, therefore, is not a worldly attachment of this life. It is actually your soul's mate. And you travel through the lives with that person. No matter what body you have. No matter what phase of existence you're in. Your soul's mate stays your soul's mate. And is reunited in Jannah. So Ghazali spoke about this first life. The second life is the life of the Dunya, this life, in this world. The third life is the life of the grave. The fourth life is the life of the Day of Judgment. And the 5th life is the life of eternity, the life of heaven or hell. May Allah SWT all, through His mercy, enter us into paradise. Inshallah. Without any detours, directly. Now what Imam Al-Hadad speaks about the second life, the life we're in, that will be the focus of today's khutbah. Second life is the shortest of the 5 lives. Yet it is the most important and consequential. Why? Because the second life will determine how the 3rd, 4th, and 5th life will go. We are told in the Quran and in Hadith that there are people on the Day of Judgment who will beg Allah SWT to let them return back. They will be in the 4th life, the Day of Judgment. having already gone through the grave. And they will beg Allah SWT to let them return 2 lives back to this life. We also know that there's people in the grave. And this is what really, really affects me every time I think about this. We were told in a hadith that by the day of judgment, there is no place that we will walk, yet there will be 6 graves underneath that spot. Everywhere we walk is a graveyard. Some graveyards are marked, and the rest there are bodies. There are people buried underneath this building. There are blessed brothers and sisters who were kings in Africa and were brought here as slaves. Even though they were always kings, the world just thought they were slaves and treated them as such. They may be buried. Our dear brothers and sisters from the Native Americans may be buried. Others. We are told by the day of judgment there's not a single place we will walk and there are not graves beneath us. The people in the 4th life, on the day of judgment, they're begging Allah, let us return back. And the angels will rebut them and say, weren't you sent a prophet? You rejected your prophet. And Allah SWT will order that they don't receive another life of the second life. It's over. The people of the grave, when they're in their grave, and we're told in the hadith that when people are buried in their grave, they will literally hear the footsteps of their family members and friends leaving. And then they will feel alone with the unseen world. The last connection that they will have to the people of this world are when they hear the footsteps leaving. And their closest family members will stay the longest, but they too will leave. And then they will be alone with the unseen. Those people that hear those footsteps, you don't think they're still hearing the footsteps of earth? Imagine the people of the 3rd life when they hear the footsteps of the people of the 2nd life. That's us. And they know with every footstep they hear above them from the earth that is their day in the sun. When we are in the 2nd life, this is our day in the sun. Then we go into the darkness of the grave, unless Allah SWT illuminates our grave with angelic light. And may Allah SWT expand and illuminate all our graves. But the 2nd life is when you get to have your day in the sun. And again on the day of judgment, people will be asked, how long did you tarry in this life? How long was the 2nd life for you? And they will say, it was a day or half a day. The time from the beginning of the day to Asr. This is our day in the sun. And as Imam Ghazali says in his book, Ya'yul Walad, Dear Beloved Son, he says, think of all the people before you that have passed. They are all waiting for you to join them. And we're in our day of the sun. If someone died amongst the early people, they may have been in their grave for 1,000,000 years by now. In our religious tradition, we don't calculate that mankind has been on earth for 6,000 years or something. Right? We know that that's a knowledge that only Allah has. We don't know exactly when Adam a.s. was alive on earth. Could have been hundreds of thousands of years, if not more. And those people have been now. Imagine this. If someone has been in their grave now for 100,000 years, 50,000 years, and they were alive for 50, 60 years, don't you think in relation to the 3rd life of the grave, their life of this world feels like a day on earth? 50 years versus 50,000 years? It won't feel like a day on earth. And their entire life of the grave, those 100,000 years that they are in the unseen world, was determined by the few days or the day that they were in the sun. And this is our day. And the incredible thing about that is, we don't even know where in the day we are. This is the one day that we will look back on from the day of judgment. Inshallah, from paradise. And we don't know where in the day we are. We may assume that it's morning, and it may be evening for us, and the person next to us is still afternoon. For some of us, night may be around the corner. This is a day that you cannot look outside and calculate. This is a day that everyone doesn't get the same hours and minutes. But this is our day. Purely as a mathematical equation, any number, let's say x, divided by infinity equals 0. This life, in comparison to the 5th life of the hereafter, is mathematically nothing. So in one hand is nothing from a quantitative side, number side. On the other hand, it is everything, because this is the life that Allah SWT has given us. And this is our chance. So when the people of the 3rd life, the people of the grave, when they're hearing the footsteps above them, how envious they are of those footsteps, they would trade their lives with anyone above them. Why? Because the people they hear above them, the people who are still in their day of the sun, have a chance to turn back. They know that the people above them can be like Imam Al-Junaid, the great scholar who said, someone saw him in a dream after he passed away. They said, Ya Abdul Qasim, that was his nickname, his kunya, his nickname. They said, Ya Abdul Qasim, what news do you have? And he says, gone are all the illusions. This is Imam Al-Junaid, one of the greatest scholars of our tradition. He said, all the books I wrote, all the speeches I delivered, all of that is gone. The only thing that saved me were the 2 rakats I used to make in the middle of the night when no one was watching. The people in the grave, when they hear the footsteps above them, they know that those people still have a chance. But imagine how they feel if they were to know that the people above them are literally wasting their day in the sun. How much our ancestors, the ones who loved us, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, who loved us, who now see the unseen world, how much they wish when we visit them in the graveyard that they could speak to us and not just hear our du'as. And they could say, if you knew what we knew, every night would be the 27th night of Ramadan. Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every prayer, when the Imam says, pray as if this is your last prayer, you would know it may be. Night may come. In this world, night comes after Maghrib. When it comes to the night of our life, it can come after Fajr. Every moment becomes so precious. Because for every second on earth, more than 1 billion years of the hereafter will be determined. Of course, with Allah's mercy, but will be determined. More than 1 billion. Because there is no number that can compare to infinity. And as we have said, there's an authentic hadith in Bukhari and Muslim where the people of heaven and the people of hell will be brought forth, and a black ram or ox will be brought forth, and they will be told that that animal represents death, and then it will be ordered that the animal be slaughtered, and death will die, and infinity, eternity will begin. And the people of heaven will rejoice, for they know that the only killer of pleasures is death, and there is no death now. And the people in hell will grieve because they know that the only thing they dreamed for was death. It would end their suffering, and there is no death now. But that is not today. This is the day in the sun. This is the day that was created for us to live in, that we were gifted. This is our day that we are stepping when maybe billions are beneath the earth. A few hundred of us here are above the earth. There may be billions of people in this square mile underneath the earth. Millions. And they're hearing these few footsteps above. What are we going to do with those few breaths that we have? There will be thousands of years perhaps. Allah knows when the day of judgment will come. But there may be hundreds and thousands of years where we will then be listening to those above us and wondering what they are doing. So may Allah SWT give us the clarity, the energy, and the guidance to use the one day we have underneath the sun. Ask Allah for forgiveness, for He is the one who hears. The Prophet ﷺ once sent an army to Persia, and he sent a letter with that army. It's one of the most incredible and frightening letters you could ever receive if you're the enemy. You're sending a letter with a small group of soldiers to one of the superpowers of the earth, the Persian Empire. And in that letter, you tell the very evil and oppressive king, I am sending you an army that loves death the way that you love life. I am sending you an army that loves death the way that you love life. And why is that the case? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, the believer is like a bird. Some of us have heard this. The believer is like a bird. Their body is a cage. Death is when the cage rattles and shakes and breaks, and the bird can return back to his Lord. That's all it is. It's the returning of the one who loves to the one they love. And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, however, the one who rejects Allah is like the animal that dies and stays in the mud and never rises. In Surah Naziyat, Allah SWT describes the one who is with Allah, their soul swiftly leaves their body. It's been described as like a string that leaves from butter. If you pull string from butter, it swiftly goes. And the one who is attached to the dunya, to this world, it is described that when the angels come to pull, and if you read this, the beginning of Surah Naziyat, there's a beautiful description of the two states of those souls. It is as if you take a piece of cloth and you're to wrap it around a thorn bush and try to pull the cloth away. That is the body, that is the soul of the person who is attached to the dunya. The reality is, this journey from the second life to the third life, to the fourth life, to the fifth life, does not have to be frightening. The Prophet ﷺ said, I am sending you an army that loves death the way you love life. There is always the taqwa, the fear based in love of, Ya Allah, we didn't do enough. But there's also Bilal radiallahu anhu. It is recorded that he was smiling as he died.